So like, what even is Len'en? There are probably many Touhou fans who are just like how I was 2 weeks ago. We know Touhou, but we keep hearing about this thing called Len'en. Len'en games, Len'en characters, Len'en fanworks, Len'en crazy game design. But like, what is it? Is it a Touhou thing? Is it its own thing? Where can I find a Len'en thing? Well, dear viewer, we'll answer that question and more as I take you through my journey to find out what Len'en is. So Len'en is a series of video games made by one person, Boon. Nah, I'm just kidding. Their name is Jinx. They were well known for making these fan remakes of PC98 Touhou games in a more modern style. Though as far as I'm aware, none of them, save for this weird Touhou 3 thingy, were publicly released. After getting the rights and blessings to work on a game from a disbanded circle they used to be in, Jinx created the modern form of Len'en project. It looks like Touhou, it has a lot of mechanics that are like Touhou, but it is not actually part of Touhou. It is not a derivative work, and is instead its own series. So, what now? Well, instead of just doing a general series overview, I decided to base this video around my personal experiences playing the first 2 Len'en games. Len'en 1, Evanescent Existence, and Len'en 2, Earth and Miraculous Sword. Why 2 games? Because by my thumbnail artist's recommendation and Jinx's own admission, you kind of need both to learn what the setting is. They also both came out at the same time. I can start with the positive right away. Aside from possibly the next game to release, all official Len'en games are free. And I don't mean like Moria Shrine free, I mean completely legally free to download. That's awesome! So if you want to get into Len'en, the games are easily accessible. First on the docket, we have Len'en 1. From the instrumentation and the graphics, you can clearly see Touhou's inspiration on the game. But it's not just a straight copy. The musical compositions sound pretty different, and the graphics have their own distinct style. Honestly, I kind of like this art style more than Zune's, save for one thing I'll get into later. When you dive into the game, you run into another difference: light mode. If you just want to see the story, then you can give yourself more resources to get through the game. I've always told people that simply reading a Touhou game story is not enough to get the full experience. You need to have the music and bullet patterns to go with it. But shmups are not everyone's cup of tea. I think offering an optional mode like this is good. Len'en also does something else unique for most Touhou games. You unlock characters. This isn't a photo spin-off or a versus game. This is a straight Danmaku shmup. But this system does play into the game's design, which I'll talk about a bit later. Yabusame is your starting character. For my playthroughs of Len'en 1 and 2, I did normal mode standard. Now for the actual main game, I'm not going to go over every single stage and character. Instead, I'm going to talk about gameplay in broad strokes. In Len'en 1, your default shot type is pretty fun. You've got a powerful homing shot and unfocused spread. The shot deals a lot of damage and ensures the stage sections are always manageable. On the topic of stages, something I liked about both Len'en games was the pacing of levels. No stage section feels like it goes on too long, which is an issue at least one stage in most Touhou games has. But shorter stages don't always mean easier stages. In Len'en, enemies are aggressive. In Touhou, you tend to go to the point of collection line to get a lot of items. You might want to in Len'en 1 and 2 because extra lives can be gained from score. Don't! Len'en's more aggressive enemies mean that it's almost always dangerous to go for the point of collection. So then to boss fights. In Len'en 1, almost all of the characters know each other. This is actually to the game's detriment in my opinion. Touhou characters tend to be met for the first time by the protagonist to force them to introduce themselves and their personalities in a natural way. In Len'en 1, you don't have this framing device, so you can't really gauge a character's personality that well. My main problem with the art also comes up with the boss fights. The proportions of the characters and their faces are extremely similar, perhaps even more so than Zune's. So the designs kind of blend together in my mind, save for a few standouts like Subakura and their excellent hat. It's a weird case where I think the art looks nicer than Touhou's, but leaves less of an impression. But what about boss gameplay? The boss fights are where Len'en's differences truly shine. Len'en's patterns involve a lot more gimmicks, which are a ton of fun. The fights feel a lot more creative than Touhou's standard fare. You've got water attacks, playing around with flipping a canvas, a bad apple style beam, and more. It's all cool. Despite dialogue being somewhat lacking in my opinion, you get a great impression of characters through their fights. I might not remember Kuroji's words, but I will remember her flipping canvas attack fondly. The boss fights are also where you'll mainly use Len'en's different bomb system. By grazing, you can build up a meter to charge a flash bomb. This doesn't cost a standard bomb, and instead just sets your meter back to 0. By using it, you can perform a tiny bomb to get out of a tight spot, and it doesn't count against capturing spell cards. It's a cool way to reward graze without being super integral to a normal mode run. But also with bombs, we get a change that makes Len'en easier than most Touhou games. Watch carefully. Did you see that? I did a death bomb, but the window was massive. Len'en gives a lot more leniency for bombs on death, which I actually like a lot. A bomb in Touhou and Len'en is meant to be a screen clear resource. Losing all of them at once because of a first time pattern or stray stage enemy can feel frustrating. Here, you can still lose in that window, but it's much easier to save all your bombs. It's a great compromise in my eyes. The game also takes your new defensive options into account. Bullet patterns in Len'en can be wackier and more dense because of your bigger bombing window. You get a lot more PC98 core patterns. I mentioned that Jinx did those remakes before, and you can feel it in the game's design. There's a lot of patterns with bigger emphasis on fast-spawning bullets and dramatic ideas instead of focusing on visual spectacle like the Windows Touhou games. I don't think either of these approaches are better than the other, and they instead stand strong as two separate ways to design a shmup. There's another element that makes Len'en 1 easier. Yabusame is kind of busted. They not only have great options for bosses and stages, but they also get 4 bombs per life. The difficulty of Len'en 1 and 2 with them is easier than the other characters, but it feels like this is by design. You can ease into Len'en games with Yabusame, and then go for harder challenges on the same difficulty with other characters. It's a more gradual curve versus raising an entire difficulty level. Len'en's difficulty with Yabusame is interesting. With standard Touhou mechanics, Len'en 1's difficulty would probably be up there with, say, Touhou 5 or 12. But thanks to the bombing system, I found this to be an easier shmup to 1cc than any of the main Touhou games. So if you're learning Touhou but can't get your 1cc yet, maybe try Len'en 1. Lastly, presentation and music. Len'en 1 is based on the premise of going through a weird dimension to find something. Characters each think the thing that they're trying to find is something different, so the mystery of the ultimate goal is pretty fun. There's cool backgrounds that are quite distinct. You go underwater at one point, and also enter a cyber world at another. The music's also enjoyable, but nothing's stuck in my mind quite yet. But I also start Touhou games the same way. I'm sure with more listens, I'll find some songs to love. But Len'en 1 overall? I really like it. It's got a nice bomb system, unique patterns, a fun shot type, and enjoyable presentation. I'd put it up there with the upper half of Touhou games. If you want to get into Len'en or play a fun Touhou-like shmup, then I highly recommend playing Len'en 1. It's a great game to start with if you like Touhou. Len'en 2, on the other hand, oh boy. Now, this game is not substantially worse than Len'en 1 or anything. In fact, one might argue it's the better game. Remember what I said about characters already knowing each other in Len'en 1? That's gone in Len'en 2. Protagonists meet each character for the first time, which leads to proper introductions, so the cast and writing end up being more memorable. The Lone Shark Bird Kibaru, for example. They speak with some business person bravado, and it's great. Subakura also gets to shine immediately, since they're playable from the start. They're probably my favorite of the Len'en characters so far. They act as if they're surrounded by idiots, as no one can keep up with their witty jokes. They also have a funny hat that I think can talk. I also enjoyed the music and graphical presentation more in 2. The world of Mugenri is built up a bit more, so we have more cohesive locations. There's also more music tracks I found myself enjoying. This one reminded me of Cossack 2 from Mega Man 4. Away from presentation, what's different from 1? Well, first, you get 3 characters from the start. While the first game feels specifically designed around Yabusame's attacks, here, each character feels like they have strong and weak areas throughout the game. Yabusame is still the best starter character because of their 4 bombs, but they can't steamroll through like they sort of can in Len'en 1. This threw me off at first, but it was enjoyable switching between different characters after failed runs. With Subakura, I had to learn how to manage the stage sections since they lack range. This in turn improved my Yabusame runs. But that's another thing. Runs. In Len'en 1, I was able to get a normal 1cc on my 3rd attempt. Len'en 2 probably took me about 4 times as long to get a normal 1cc. 4 reasons, good and bad. I'll just get the bad out of the way first. This game is a lot more Len'en-y than the first one. This isn't always bad, but when it is, it stings. For example, there are 2 white flashes, which I won't show, that mess with visibility, and it's meant to be an obstacle. While forcing memorization is a new idea, it's not one I like with its in-game implementation. Difficulty, like this, puts people with light sensitivity issues at an unfair disadvantage. Since it's only in 2 sections and not crucial to the game, I don't think removing the flashes would bring any negatives. The other thing I don't like that this game does is ambush attacks. Enemies shoot fast and close, and sometimes you just aren't ready. So on your first few runs, you'll be met with cheap deaths. Those things are where the divergence from Touhou makes the game worse in my opinion. But Len'en's differences also do bring benefits. Patterns are once again diverse and come with unique ideas. You have bounding lasers, Haniwa way before 17 did it. A sword fight where a character cuts objects, and a whole lot more. The fights in this game are also harder, and I found myself utilizing the flash bomb mechanic more. The new ideas create a bigger challenge in Len'en 2, but here, it's a good type of challenge. Once I learned the ins and outs of Len'en's flash bombs and standard bombs, I was having a pretty great time, and I did eventually get a normal 1cc. In that sense, overall, Len'en 2 does kind of feel like a better game. It uses the game's unique mechanics more than the first, does a better job developing the setting, and offers greater challenge. But because the first game is a bit more accessible and less chaotic with its ideas, I ended up liking Len'en 1 more. But you can't really go wrong with either. I say, start with 1, and then play 2 if you like it. Both of these are solid shmups. Time for extra! Len'en features extra stages like Touhou, but it even has difficulty select. Easy Extra lets you bomb through spells and makes patterns easier. As I've never beaten a Touhou extra stage, this is what I did. The extra stage in 1 is pretty fun, but I especially enjoyed the extra stage in 2. I think 2's extra stage boss theme is my favorite song so far. Okay, so that's Len'en 1 and 2. While this is where I ended my gameplay, I did want to mention a few more things. Like Touhou, Len'en has policies in place that allow for derivative works, free or commercial. There's this cool game called Misremembered Memories on Steam that reimagines the Len'en 1 extra stage bosses as a PC98 game. So like Touhou, Len'en's a sandbox for creators. Len'en the main series also gets pretty crazy. I think Len'en 4 has like a 3-minute dialogue section, Len'en 0 is a mobile game that plays completely differently, and I think there's a cafe, and there's also a Hifu-style album that dives into lore. So yeah, Len'en is a wild series. My main takeaway is that Len'en is what non-Touhou fans think Touhou is. When you get into Touhou, things kinda normalize. But with Len'en's faster gameplay, weirder characters, and the general state of the series, it truly feels like you have no idea what to expect with Len'en. And you know what? I really liked that. I wasn't a Len'en fan before making this video, but now I am. So if any of this sounded interesting to you, please, go check out Len'en.